Every summer, I see the same thing. Somebody gets excited, plants a couple of watermelon seedlings in the corner of their garden, and then 3 months later, they are standing there holding a pale, flavorless melon, wondering what went wrong. Or worse, the vines took over half the yard and never produced a single fruit worth eating. I'm going to be straight with you. Watermelons are not easy. They're one of the most rewarding things you can grow in a home garden, but they're also one of the most demanding, and nobody seems to want to tell you that part. I have been growing watermelons my whole life, and I can tell you right now, the difference between a watermelon that makes you close your eyes and smile and one that tastes like a wet sponge comes down to whether you set things up right from the very beginning. In this video, I am going to give you the complete, honest guide to actually growing watermelons at home. I'm talking about space, soil, water, feeding, timing, and everything in between. I am not going to sugarcoat it, and I am not going to skip the parts that are hard. If you follow what I'm about to show you, you can grow melons at home that beat anything you have ever bought at the grocery store. And if the conditions are not right for your garden, I respect you enough to tell you that too, so you do not waste an entire season finding out the hard way. Stay until the end, because I have got a bonus tip my grandfather taught me for knowing exactly when a watermelon is ripe. It is the most reliable test I have ever used, and it has nothing to do with thumping. You do not want to miss that one. Growing watermelons is not like growing tomatoes or zucchini. Watermelons are space hogs, heavy feeders, and they demand conditions that most gardens do not naturally provide. But if you go in with your eyes open and you set things up the right way from the start, there is no reason you cannot grow beautiful melons right in your own backyard. Here is what you need to know. Before we get into the steps, let me lay out what watermelons actually need so you understand what you are signing up for. At a fundamental level, watermelons require 5 things: a lot of space, a lot of heat, a lot of water, rich, loose soil, and a long growing season. Miss any one of those and you're going to be fighting an uphill battle the entire time. Now here's something most people do not realize. Watermelons are not like pumpkins or winter squash. With a pumpkin, every place the vine touches the ground, it sends out little roots. Those roots all along the vine help the plant take up extra water and nutrients, so even if your soil's not perfect, the plant has backup systems. Watermelons do not do that. A watermelon plant relies entirely on its central root system at the base of the plant. That is it. One set of roots supporting a vine that can run 15 to 20 feet and produce fruit that weighs 15, 20, sometimes 30 pounds. That is why soil quality matters so much with this crop. If those roots cannot do their job, the whole operation falls apart. I also want to be honest with you about growing season. If your frost-free season is under 150 days, watermelons are a genuine gamble. Most varieties need 100 to 110 days just to reach maturity, and that is under ideal conditions. Add in a slow start from cool spring weather or a stretch of cloudy days, and you are pushing right up against the edge. And if your summer nights do not consistently reach the 70s, you're going to struggle to ripen fruit no matter what you do. My grandfather used to say watermelons are a rich man's crop because they demand the best of everything. Best soil, best sun, most water, most space. He was not saying you need money to grow them. He was saying you need to give them your best spot in the garden and your full attention, or do not bother. Let us start with space, because this is the first thing that catches people off guard. Each watermelon plant needs a minimum of 25 square feet to itself. That is a 5 foot by 5 foot area per plant, and that is the bare minimum. If you are planting 4 plants, and 4 is a good number for a home garden, you are looking at 100 square feet. That is a 5 foot by 20 foot strip of garden, or a 10 by 10 plot. I know that sounds like a lot, and it is. Watermelons are what I call garden hogs. Those vines are going to run in every direction, and they need room to do it. If you try to cram them into a small raised bed, the vines will tangle up, airflow drops, disease moves in, and the plant cannot produce the way it is supposed to. Now, I will give you the one exception. If you are growing a small fruited variety like Sugar Baby, you can get away with tighter spacing and you can even trellis them. Sugar baby melons top out at about 5 pounds, sometimes less, and a sturdy trellis can handle that. But if you are growing a full-size variety like Crimson Sweet or Charleston Gray, forget the trellis. I have watched people try it, and here's what happens. The melon sizes up, gets heavy. The trellis sags or breaks. The melon drops and crimps the stem, and now you've got an unripe melon that will never finish because the supply line is cut. That is a whole season wasted on one bad decision. Full-size watermelons belong on the ground. Plain and simple. If you do not have the space, grow something else this year and plan for watermelons when you do. There's no shame in that. And it beats the frustration of a failed crop. Now let us talk about soil, because this is where you either set yourself up for success or set yourself up for heartbreak. Like I said, watermelon roots are carrying the entire load for the plant. There are no backup roots along the vine. So those roots need loose, well-draining soil they can spread through easily. If your soil is compacted or heavy clay, the roots cannot expand and the plant cannot take up the water and nutrients it needs to produce a big, juicy melon. You need to amend your soil before you plant. Work in a generous amount of compost for fertility and coarse sand for drainage. You want the soil to feel light and crumbly when you squeeze a handful. If it clumps up in a hard ball, it is too heavy. Now here's a technique I strongly recommend. Mound your soil at each planting site. Build up a mound about 6 to 8 inches high and about 18 inches across. You're going to plant right on top of that mound. What this does is raise the crown of the plant just slightly above the surrounding grade. Water drains away from the stem instead of pooling around it, and that little bit of elevation helps combat powdery mildew, which we're going to talk about later because it is almost guaranteed to show up. Before you set the plant, work the soil in a radius of about 2 feet around the mound. Loosen it up deep so the roots have somewhere to go when they start spreading. Do not just dig a hole the size of the root ball and call it done. That is like putting a plant in a pot with no drainage. The roots hit that wall of compacted soil and they stall out. My grandfather would spend more time preparing the soil for watermelons than for any other crop in the garden. He would work each planting spot a full week before transplanting, turning it, amending it, building his mounds, and watering them in to let everything settle. I thought it was excessive until I tasted his melons. He grew the sweetest watermelons I have ever eaten in my life, and it started with the soil every single time. Here's my honest opinion. If your native soil is heavy clay and you are not willing to do serious amendment work, grow your watermelons in a different spot or grow a different crop. Fighting bad soil all season long is a losing battle with this plant. When it comes to planting, timing is everything, and the most common mistake I see is people putting their watermelons out too early. I understand the temptation. Spring comes. The garden centers have transplants on the shelves and you want to get going. But watermelons will not tolerate cool conditions. Period. Do not transplant until your soil temperature is at least 70 degrees at 4 inches deep. Get yourself a soil thermometer. They cost a few dollars and they save you from this exact mistake. And here's the thing people overlook. It is not just daytime temperatures that matter. Your nighttime temperatures need to be consistently in the 70s. If your nights are still dropping into the 50s and 60s, the plant might survive, but the fruit will not ripen properly. That is where those white, bland, flavorless melons come from. The plant set fruit, but the nights were never warm enough to develop the sugars. For most folks in zones 5 through 7, you are looking at early to mid-June, before conditions are truly right. In zones 8 and 9, you can push it to late May. Zone 10 and warmer, you have more flexibility, but even then, check your soil temperature before you plant. As for whether to direct sow seeds or transplant seedlings, I prefer transplants. Watermelons have a long maturity window, and starting with transplants gives you a 2 to 3 week head start, which can make the difference between ripe fruit and a frost-killed vine in shorter season areas. Set your transplants at the same depth they were growing in the pot, right on top of your mound, and water them in well. Do not bury the stem deeper than it was. Watermelons are not tomatoes. They do not root along the stem, and burying them deep just invites rot. Watering is where a lot of home gardeners lose the battle with watermelons, and I'm going to be blunt about why. Watermelons are about 90% water. When you think about it that way, it makes perfect sense that the single most important input for fruit quality is water. If the soil dries out while the fruit is developing, the flesh goes spongy and flavorless. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That melon you cut open, and it looks okay on the outside, but inside it is mealy, dry, and tastes like absolutely nothing. That is a watering failure. What you want is that crisp, dripping, sweet bite that makes you close your eyes on a hot July afternoon. And the way you get that is consistent moisture from the time the fruit sets until the day you harvest. Now, when I say consistent, I mean it. You cannot let the soil dry out for 3 days and then flood it and expect good results. Watermelons need steady, even moisture. In peak summer heat, I am watering at the base of each plant every 1 to 2 days, depending on how fast the soil is drying. Stick your finger in the soil about 2 inches down. If it feels dry at that depth, it is time to water. If it still feels damp, you can wait another day. And I want to be specific about how you water. Always water at the base of the plant, right at the soil line. Do not use overhead sprinklers. Do not spray the leaves. Every time you get those leaves wet from above, you are rolling out the welcome mat for powdery mildew and other fungal problems. Drip irrigation is the gold standard if you can set it up. If you cannot, hand watering with a hose or a watering can right at the base works just fine. That is what I do in most of my beds, and it has never let me down. Here's my honest take. If you're somebody who travels a lot in the summer, or if you just know you're not going to be out there every day or two with a hose, watermelons might not be the right crop for you this year. I would rather tell you that now than have you find out in August when you cut open a melon that tastes like cardboard. My grandfather checked his watermelon soil every single morning. He would walk out there first thing, push his finger into the dirt, and if it needed water, he watered it before he did anything else. He treated those melons like they were the most important thing in the garden, and honestly, for the amount of space and effort they take, they should be. Now let us talk about feeding, because watermelons are some of the hungriest plants you will ever grow. Think about what you are asking one root system to do. You're asking it to push a vine 15 to 20 feet, produce all that foliage, and then generate fruit that weighs 15 to 20 pounds or more. That takes a massive amount of nutrition, and nitrogen is the big one. During the vine growth phase, watermelons burn through nitrogen faster than almost any other garden crop. I recommend a minimum of 2 applications of a high nitrogen fertilizer, like blood meal, during the season. The first application goes down right at planting or within the first week after transplanting. Work it into the soil around the base of the plant. The second application goes down when the vines start to run, which is usually about 3 to 4 weeks after transplanting. That second dose gives the plant the fuel it needs right when it is growing the fastest. On top of the blood meal, I like to add a balanced, slow-release organic fertilizer at planting time. Something like a good quality compost-based granular fertilizer that gives you a steady background feed all season, while the blood meal provides the quick nitrogen boost the plant needs during its most aggressive growth. Now here's a detail a lot of people miss. Once your fruit is set and is actively sizing up, back off the nitrogen. At that point, the plant needs to be putting its energy into the fruit, not into more vine and leaf growth. If you keep pushing nitrogen heavy through the fruiting stage, you will get a beautiful vine with mediocre melons. Let the plant shift gears naturally. I'm not going to tell you that you need the most expensive fertilizer on the shelf. I have used budget blood meal from the garden center and gotten excellent results. What matters is that you actually apply it on schedule. The best fertilizer in the world does nothing sitting in your shed. If you are getting something out of this so far, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I put out new videos every week with honest, no-nonsense gardening advice that you can actually use in your own garden. It is free, it takes half a second, and it means you will not miss the next one. All right, let us keep going. Now I need to talk to you about powdery mildew, because if you are growing watermelons, you are almost certainly going to deal with it. I am not going to sugarcoat this. Powdery mildew is one of those problems that comes with the territory. Watermelons need damp soil and warm conditions to thrive, and those are exactly the conditions that powdery mildew loves. You will see it show up as a white, powdery coating on the leaves, usually starting on the older leaves closer to the base of the plant. It looks like somebody dusted your plant with flour. Left unchecked, it spreads fast and it will weaken the plant enough to affect your fruit quality and yield. The good news is you can manage it. My approach is a preventive spray using a simple baking soda solution. Mix 1 tablespoon of baking soda into 1 gallon of water, add a few drops of liquid dish soap to help it stick to the leaves, and spray the foliage thoroughly once a week. Start spraying before you even see mildew. Do not wait until it shows up to react. By the time you can see it, it has already been working on your plant for days. If you are already seeing heavy mildew, spray twice a week until you get it knocked back, then go to your weekly schedule. Remove any leaves that are badly affected. If a leaf is more white than green, it is not helping the plant anymore, and it is just spreading spores to healthy leaves. Cut it off and throw it away. Do not compost it. The mounding technique I talked about earlier helps here too. That raised planting site keeps the stem and crown drier, which is one less foothold for fungal problems. And watering at the base instead of overhead makes a real difference. You are managing this problem, not eliminating it. Except that, stay on top of your weekly spraying and your plants will produce through it just fine. All right, now the part everybody wants to know. How do you tell when a watermelon is actually ripe? This is hands down the hardest part of growing watermelons at home, and it is where most people get it wrong. I have cut into more unripe watermelons than I care to admit over the years, so trust me when I say I understand the frustration. There's no single perfect indicator, but there are 3 signs I look for, and when all 3 line up, you can pick with confidence. First, check the tendril. There's a small curly tendril on the vine right where the fruit stem attaches. When that tendril dries out completely and turns brown, the melon is getting close. If it is still green and flexible, the melon is not ready. Second, check the skin. Press your fingernail into the rind. A ripe watermelon has a hard rind that resists your nail. If your nail slides in easily, the melon needs more time. Third, and this is the most important one, check the ground spot. That is the pale patch on the bottom where the melon has been sitting on the ground. When the melon is unripe, that spot is white or pale green. As it ripens, it turns yellow. When it reaches a deep, creamy, butter yellow, the melon is ready. I look for all 3 signs before I pick. If 2 out of 3 are there but the ground spot is still white, I wait. Now you have probably heard people talk about thumping the melon and listening for a hollow sound. I am going to be honest with you. I have never found that to be reliable enough to trust. Some people swear by it, and if it works for you, that is fine. But I have thumped melons that sounded perfect and cut into them only to find they were not ready. The 3 indicators I just gave you are what I rely on, and they have served me well for a long time. Let me walk you through the most common problems I see with watermelons so you are ready for them. First, white or flavorless flesh. This is almost always a temperature issue. Your nights were not warm enough to develop sugars in the fruit, or you picked too early. There's no fix after the fact. Make sure your nights are consistently in the 70s before you expect ripe fruit, and use the 3 ripeness signs I just gave you. Second, the vines are healthy and flowering, but no fruit is setting. That is a pollination problem. Watermelons need bees to move pollen from the male flowers to the female flowers, and sometimes there just are not enough pollinators working your garden. The fix is simple. Go out in the morning when the flowers are open, pick a male flower, peel back the petals, and gently rub the pollen onto the center of a female flower. You can tell the difference because female flowers have a tiny swelling at the base that looks like a miniature watermelon. Do this for a few days, and you should see fruit start to set. Third, your vines are wilting suddenly even though you are watering properly. Check the base of the main stem close to the ground. If you see small holes in what looks like sawdust, you have got vine borers. They are a nasty pest that burrows into the stem and eats it from the inside. If you catch it early, you can carefully slit the stem with a razor blade, remove the borer, and mound soil over the wound. If the damage is too extensive, the vine is done. Fourth, spongy, mealy texture in the fruit. That is, inconsistent watering during fruit development. The soil dried out at some point while the melon was sizing up. There's nothing you can do after the fact, but for the next melon, keep that moisture steady. And fifth, powdery mildew taking over the plant. You fell behind on your preventive spraying. Hit it with a baking soda solution right away, go to twice a week until it is under control, and remove the worst affected leaves. Now, if you take nothing else from this video, remember this. My grandfather taught me this when I was a kid, and it is the single most reliable way to know when your watermelon is ripe. Forget the thump. Forget counting days on the calendar. Go out to your melon patch every morning starting around 90 days after planting and flip each melon just enough to see the belly. That ground spot where it has been resting on the soil tells you everything. When the melon is young, that spot is white. As it matures, it shifts to a pale greenish yellow. And when it reaches a deep, rich, creamy yellow, the color of real butter, that melon is ripe and it is ready to come off the vine. My grandfather checked his melons every single morning and he never once cut into a green watermelon. Not once. He used to tell me the belly never lies, and in all my years of growing, I have found that to be true. The tendril and the skin test are good supporting evidence, but the belly is the one I trust most. Learn to read that color, and you will never cut open a watermelon and be disappointed again, and that is the honest truth about growing watermelons at home. They are not easy. I am not going to pretend to your garden on a hot August afternoon, and pick a watermelon you grew yourself, and it is sweet and crisp and dripping with juice. There's not a single thing in the grocery store that compares to that feeling. If this helped you out, go ahead and subscribe. I put out new videos every week to help you grow better food with your own two hands. Take care, and I will catch you in the next one.